Cigars.
The time is 6:30 and we'll call the regular school board meeting on January 12th, 2015 to order and have roll call, please.
Dyke.
Present.
Walker.
Here.
Frisbee.
Present.
Maycumber. Here. Wintering.
Here.
All are present and accounted for. Agenda item 1 is to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections, Dr. Cox?
No. Motion to approve agenda.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Wintering.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Motion carried 5-0. Agenda item 2 is to welcome the visitors and have public comment. I'm not going to read the entire paragraph. I would remind you that your comments are limited to 2 minutes so that we can continue moving on. And we ask that you remember Iowa law prohibits us from discussing specific employees or their job performance. Are there any comments from the public this evening? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, comments by board members and superintendent. Dr. Cox.
Thank you.
Start us off?
Sure. We had several disruptions to our schedule last week due to the winter weather. The lost day of school on Wednesday will be made up at the end of the year, which would make Friday, May 22nd, our final day of school for students. And due to changes in Iowa code for districts that follow the 180-day schedule instead of the 1,080 hours, the final day of school is a full day, not a half day. Reminder that there's no school next Monday. We have teacher in service that day. Our School Improvement Advisory Committee will meet on Wednesday at 5 o'clock here in the middle school cafeteria. School calendar options for 2015-16 and a presentation on project-based learning are 2 of the things on the agenda for that night. This Friday, a group from Charles City will travel to Albert Lee High School. So Lorraine, our food service director, Dawn Wolf, and a couple of others will be joining me. We're headed up there to see their food service program and how they operate. And then we're planning a trip to Ballard High School in Huxley the following week as well to see a different provider. And my final comments, it was a year ago at this time, it was January 13th of 2014, that the board approved moving forward with town hall meetings regarding 3 facility options for our school district. After considerable amounts of input and revisions, tonight marks another milestone for the Charles City Community School District as we continue to create a destination school district that will serve our students now and into the future. And it definitely is an exciting time to be a comment. Thanks.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any board members have any comments?
I attended my first ever high school bowling match, meet, tournament, whatever it's called, on Friday, and I was thoroughly impressed. It was awesome to see. There was far more people than I've ever could have imagined attending, parents, grandparents, stuff. It was really a pretty cool thing. So if you get an opportunity, it's worth seeing. Very competitive, very
good bowlers.
Very good. Yeah, very good team. So.
Well, and I see they had a meet this afternoon, and based upon my Twitter feed, we soundingly defeated Independence.
Good.
With a lot of points to spare, so they
Knock them
continue to do well. Any other comments by board members? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is the public hearing for conveyance of property. So this is the time and place for the public hearing and the meeting on the matter of the proposed conveyance of interest in real property, and the notice of the proposed action has been published pursuant to provisions of 297.221 of the Code of Iowa, correct, Mrs. O'Brien?
Yes.
It's all been published?
Yep.
So now would be the time and place for anyone to give any verbal comments to the conveyance of property to the city. Basically what this is cleaning up our property lines around the high school property, around Salisbury Avenue and First Avenue. No comments from the public? Did we receive any written comments or objections?
No written comments.
So we will close the public hearing and move on to agenda item number 5, which is BLDD design update. And ask Jean Underwood and the team to come forward and continue to give us the information on our new destination school.
Thank you. So we've been really busy since the last board meeting. We met with the board on the 2nd of January, received some great direction, and so today is an update on that. Earlier today, we met with representatives from the city, we've met with the building committee, we met with the O&M staff here at the middle school. So this is our 4th meeting here today. So we've seen a lot of you already today, and some of you have already seen the drawings, but for those of you that haven't, I'll quickly go through them. You should have in front of you a packet of drawings, an updated schedule, an updated budget, and then some comparisons of mechanical systems for the facility. I will start with a packet of drawings. On the first sheet, you'll see the overall floor plan for the first floor. The general shape of the building has not changed. We've made a few modifications based on the conversation on January 2nd. Jeff, would you switch to the next slide, please? Go ahead one more to the enlarged plans. So on sheet 3, you'll see the enlarged plan of the gymnasium wing and the commons area. We've made some modifications in the commons with the floor elevation change. What we've done is lowered the entry into the building by 5 feet below the main floor level to eliminate stairs on the exterior of the building. So when you get dropped off in the morning or a visitor parks in the lot, they can come right into the building at that main floor level without going up or down any stairs. The administration offices and this section of the commons will all be at that lower level. And then you can see we have a set of stairs in this location and a set of stairs in this location with an elevator next to it to get up that 5 feet. We're also showing some built-in stepped seating, and then you can see we have a sketch or an idea of where we might have tables and chairs in that commons area. Another item to note is that we've added a vestibule on the west side of the commons area. This will allow people to come into the backside of the commons from some auxiliary parking that's over in this area next to the industrial tech wing. So that provides a controlled entry on the west side of the building. In addition, other modifications we've made was to reduce the size of this PE storage room. In the future, that room could be extended when phase 2 is completed so that you'll have an adequate amount of storage at that time. I don't believe there were any other changes to the plans, generally speaking, in this area. If you want to go to the next slide, Jeff.
Did you move the elevator?
We did move the elevator. In order to accommodate that 5-foot level change at the entry, we shifted the elevator from this location in the upper corner over to that into the
So you'll be able to get on
commons.
at that one level and then go up that first 5 foot?
Right.
Perfect.
So that eliminated the need for a ramp within the commons area, which takes up a lot of square footage.
And it looks like you flipped that food service area there, and it looks like that
The
would
serving
probably,
area.
the serving
It's a
area.
little, it's a little more open right now.
Yeah, I like it.
And until we finalize the plans for food service and tour, it's really
Sure,
an open question.
yeah. The flow would be good.
I had one comment from somebody in the public. They was wondering about the location of the men and women's bathrooms, that they were so clear down there and a lot of walking to get to them. But I don't know where else you could put them. You know.
They're right.
So
Well,
these,
they thought to move them up there by the festival, but you don't want them up there. You know.
yeah, they're located here to primarily serve people that are visiting the gymnasium for events. So really, they're pretty close. They're pretty close to that. The students have their own restrooms in the learning studios. So really, the only people using these are if somebody's having lunch in the commons, they'll use those, or if they're in the gymnasium. And in phase 2, for the auditorium that's going to be down in this location, they'll be conveniently located for that as well.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so the next slide, sheet 4, is the learning studios. We really haven't made many changes to this area. The one thing you will note that we updated were the resource rooms for industrial tech, FCS, and music. After reviewing the photos we have of those existing science classrooms, the upper classroom has already been mostly gutted of a lot of the science furniture and equipment, so it's pretty much an open room with the exception of a teaching station for science. So we felt like that made more sense to put in the music support spaces because we have a lot more to build and a lot more to put in that room. In this first classroom, almost all of the science casework is still there. We felt like that could be utilized by industrial tech and FCS as built-in storage that's already available with very little modification to that room. And then that creates an office for each of those 2 teachers and then a shared office for the music staff. There's always the opportunity to spread into these other classrooms on a temporary basis if somebody needed to do a lesson or something like that and they didn't feel like there was room in the office, or if they wanted to do a small group rehearsal or something like that, it was right adjacent to that. Next slide, please. This is the second floor of the commons area, so page 5. So on the second floor, if you're in the commons on the first floor, you enter the upstairs through this set of stairs, and this is the information commons area, also so library functions, those kinds of things. You can also see an office for the librarian and their staff, and then the guidance offices and resource room at this area. You can see where the elevator comes up to the second floor, and then you proceed to the learning studios down this corridor. Over here in the gym, you can see this is the upper gymnasium seating here and here, and then you can see down to the lower seating below.
So the way we currently have this designed, the only way to get to the balcony seating would be to go up from the gym floor, correct?
That's correct. Right, so this balcony seating is at a lower floor elevation than the second floor of the building.
Okay.
Because we're working off of the riser height of a bleacher system. So it'll be a much lower ceiling, a much lower floor level.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The upper level studio hasn't changed at all. It's exactly the same as what we have below. I still have some enlarged plans included of some of the individual spaces. So these are some of the lab spaces or studio lab spaces. We are going to do a separate presentation on those, and we're still working through some of those design development items. So I'm going to flip through those quickly tonight. Go ahead, Jeff. Yep, keep going. All right, so the updated overall master plan for phase 2 is what is on sheet 14. You can see high school learning studios in this area on the lower right. An extension of the commons to the east, and that creates a new middle school entrance in the future. Auditorium is right off of that newer commons, which would have access to the toilet rooms as well. We're still working through some of the details of that, but we feel like we have a solution that'll probably work with a little bit of modification. You can see the new kitchen, then the music suite, some wrestling and fitness areas, and then the second gymnasium here on the end. And then when you come over to the back of the commons, will be the new high school administration and the new high school building main entrance. So it'll have the same entry sequence. You can come into the vestibule, and then the office staff will buzz you into the building to provide that safe entry sequence. Oh, can you go back one slide, Jeff? I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. The other thing that you'll see on this master plan is this corridor that goes along the south side of the north wing of the existing high school, and then the south side of the learning studios for the middle school. This provides access for high school students to travel from the learning studios all the way up to the north wing, which would be remodeled to include all the high school exploratory spaces. So science, ag, industrial tech, art, FCS program, culinary programs. It does a couple things. It allows access so that we don't have to renovate the middle school or convert that into high school space. And it also gives a facelift to this south side of the existing building to kind of unify this whole new entry. Up on the second floor of learning studios for high school. The information commons expands to accommodate high school as well. And then we have balcony entrance into the auditorium on the second floor. The next page is C100 is the site plan. So this is the site plan for phase 1. You can see a lot of different colors on this site plan, and they all mean something. So in brown, we have the existing building, the gymnasium, industrial tech, the classroom circles, and then the north wing. Connected to the north wing is our middle school learning studios. In the center, we have the commons, and then we have the gymnasium right here. The dark dash line is the future phase 2, which we're showing just as a reference so you can see that what we're building in phase 1 stays for phase 2, and we're not reconstructing anything that we don't need to. The existing high school parking stays the same as it is with no changes. We create an entry off of First Street. This would be the bus drop-off on the side of the school with some staff parking. The dark gray area of the parking lot would be gravel parking at this point in time. We could probably do an alternate bid to pave that area or to extend it if we would like to. The road continues around to the parent drop-off area. Once again, the parking is shown in dark gray to be gravel. The other areas that are shown in dark gray, the extension of First Street and connection to Highland are still being negotiated with the city, whether or not the city would be willing to contribute to the development of those areas is something that everyone feels strongly that should happen, so we're working towards that goal. The gray ring road on this side we see as being gravel for phase 1 with an alternate bid to pave that, and then some auxiliary parking on the south side of the gym to provide some additional spectator parking until phase 2 happens and the new parking lots are built. So that would stay gravel because there's going to be building located in that area in the future. All right, go ahead to the next page. So on sheet C101, you can see the final completed master plan with the addition of the high school learning studios here, the second gym, music program, wrestling, fitness, the new kitchen, and then this is the auditorium with a loading dock off of the kitchen and auditorium with some auxiliary parking and the music program. You can see full pavement for the middle school front parking area, expansion of the staff parking, and some modifications to the existing high school parking lot to allow for a smoother curve for the ring road going around and to improve site circulation so that you're not mixing student parking and ring road traffic going at the same time. You can see we've also have drop off here in front of the high school with the main high school entrance and additional event parking. So any questions on the drawings before I hop on over to the next item on my list?
Depends on what the next item on your list is.
I think the next item on my list will be the schedule.
Okay.
And I could go through everything and then we can circle back.
That's whatever you prefer.
Okay. So I've created an updated schedule. We're done with schematic design, so we can ignore that. If you want to slide down, Jeff. We're currently in design development. We're at board meeting on the January 12th. We would like to be complete with design development for the February 9th board meeting. So between now and February 9th, we'd like to meet with staff one more time to review each of their spaces. We'll complete development of the learning studio lab spaces in particular. Keep working on the cafeteria serving questions. Keep developing the interior and the exterior of the building. Jeff's going to show us some exterior shots here shortly, and then we'll bring back some interior development as well. So there's still a lot of work to be done in the next month. From February 9th through beginning of June, completion of construction documents. We anticipate issuing an early bid package sometime in the end of March. That would be for site work or the civil work and foundations, possibly some structure, but we're not sure yet if we'll be able to make that happen. So we can get those bids received, and then contractors can be ready to start as soon as the weather breaks and all the logistics are underway. Keep sliding down, Jeff. So the remainder of the project would be bid in June, through the month of June, basically, with bids being received at the beginning of July, with construction starting shortly after. Construction to be complete sometime during the summer of 2016, so school would be able to open for the 2016-2017 school year. So we pushed back the schedule just a little bit, a week or two. We've absorbed some of that into us internally, so we feel like we're still really doable to get construction done in that amount of time and for us to get the drawings done. All right. Let's go to the HVAC systems. One thing that you asked us to do on the January 2nd board meeting was to have Mike Salmon from KCL present the different HVAC options to the building committee, which we did this afternoon. Do you want Mike to kind of review the systems that we talked about, or would you rather just make a recommendation from the building committee?
If you guys have questions for him, I guess we went through the process, and he explained all of them to all of us, Dr. Cox, Scott, myself, and the rest of the folks that were there. We kind of whittled it down to two. I guess maybe you guys maybe have other opinions, but we whittled it down. And Jerry, of course, Jerry was there too, and so Jerry had a lot of input here. But to the geothermal VRF and the condensing unit VRF was the two that we had kind of whittled it down to. And the general discussion that we kind of settled on was the geothermal VRF, and I believe it was estimated 162,000 over what we've got, but it sounds fairly, confident that we're able to actually recoup quite a bit of that extra cost in rebates from Mid-American Energy. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So it seemed like a no-brainer to us to up to that from the condensing units, especially based on Jerry's recommendation too. He preferred that over the others. So if you guys had questions, Mr. Salmon was very good at.
And all
I want to
along,
add that Mike also looked into the suggestion from 2 weeks ago about.
There was a suggestion on wastewater.
come on up to the mic.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mike Salmon with KCL Engineering on the design team here. And there was an idea brought up about wastewater VRF system as well. And that is an option. We've designed those systems before. It isn't included in your packet today, but it comes in very similar to the geothermal VRF system.
Mike, if you could use the microphone, then they can
sorry.
hear on TV.
Okay, great. The system is very similar to the geothermal VRF system that you have listed on here. The pricing is very similar. The difference would be instead of a geothermal well field, you would run piping down to the sewage treatment plant, use the effervescence pits, and then you would put a heat exchanger in there. The difference also would be you would need a boiler and a cooling tower as a backup for that system, just in case the system at the treatment plant was down for cleaning, repairs, or whatever. So the costing comes out fairly similar. There might be a little more maintenance cost with the addition of the boiler and the cooling tower. Any questions on those systems?
No, those points were kind of what Jerry had ruled as his determining factor to favor the geothermal over the wastewater.
Right.
Since I don't see Jerry here tonight, I guess.
And just for clarification, up until the packet we received for tonight's meeting was always the geothermal VRF as the basis of design, but the packet for tonight has the condensing unit VRF
Correct.
as a pricing model. So they changed it after our January 2nd meeting to bring a slightly lower price tag to it, but in the long run, the Buildings and Grounds Committee and administration agreed that we believe the geothermal VRF is probably the best bet to move forward with.
The closed loop thing that you want to mention.
And it has been questioned before, this is a closed loop geothermal system.
Right.
This is not what's commonly known as the pump and dump type of geothermal.
Correct.
It will all be closed loop underground at various depths. They would put in the closed loops to be able to take advantage of heat sources at various levels underneath
Right.
our parking lots or the grassy areas or wherever they decide to. And in the conversations this afternoon, you mentioned parking lots are a great place to put those underneath because we know that we won't be building anything on a parking lot in the future.
Right.
So, huh?
They put in blacktop parking lots because they absorb more heat.
Yeah.
There you go. So that kind of, some of those questions that have surfaced over the last month or so with the geothermal, we got answers on this afternoon.
Very, very helpful.
So thank you very much.
Thoughts or comments on that, I guess? You guys have any comments? or
No,
thoughts?
excellent, that's, I
No,
think,
those were the two I had narrowed it down to, and so, to me, you spent
thought it was
the time
especially-
with them, I trust your judgment on that.
And especially that, even though the increased cost, that there's an opportunity to recover that with the rebates was pretty enticing, I thought, too.
Very good.
So the last,
The design team, they'll be working on the rebates in the future.
yes.
I asked that question. They'll take care of that for us. They have the expertise, so, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
That's okay. The last thing I have in my packet is just the summary sheet from the budget estimate. And I just wanted to kind of walk through. At our January 2nd meeting, we were tasked with an $18.5 million building, keeping in mind that the learning studios were not to contain alternate bids or cuts primarily to hit that target, and that we should look more at the gymnasium, commons, those type of areas. So that's what we've done for tonight. So we have a list of alternates. We have the $18.5 million budget. I'll let Paul talk a little bit more about that. But just to kind of clarify, we still do have a few items that are alternates for the learning studios. One of them is to use masonry partitions in lieu of drywall. We'll keep that in there as a placeholder for now. Glass operable partitions rather than solid operable partitions. We'll still leave that in there as an option. The precast exterior walls, for now, we're happy leaving that in there. The next section of items is for civil or site work. Until we get a little better set of documents that includes the scope of the site work with the elevations and the amount of cut, the amount of fill, Estes isn't able to give us a firm price on that or a better estimate on that. We think we're within the target range, but we haven't refined that number yet. So for now, we're leaving in alternates that address some of those site work, such as gravel versus paved for ring roads and parking, those types of items. One, item number 9, the rock column soil stabilization. After getting the new geotech report, we feel like we're probably not going to need those. We left it in here just in case. As we get into it, we find out differently as we start to calculate the loads and whatnot. So we're optimistic that we won't need that. The next section includes some alternates for the gymnasium portion of the building. The first one on the list, number 10, is for gymnasium equipment. That includes things like basketball backstops, the wall padding, the volleyball standards, gym divider curtains, those types of items. So it's an equipment package typically. Now, we pulled that out because that's something that's fairly easy. If you wanted to do private fundraising or for boosters, those are good items to include in that. A lot of times, you can get vendors to give you a school a discounted price on those things as well. So we'll include that as an alternate for now. As we go through design development and start to refine our cost estimates, that may be something that just gets put back into the base project. The other thing to note is that we are estimating 700 bleachers in the gymnasium. So those are just the floor bleachers. The bleachers that go on top of the mezzanine areas, approximately 800, are being included as an alternate bid. So to start with, 700 seat, which is about the capacity that you would typically see for a junior high gym. The next item, number 12, is the gym locker room lockers. This is an item that's fairly easy to pull out as a line item, and get the cost for that. That's also something that's easy to fundraise for as well. So we went ahead and pulled that number out just so you could have that as an option to get to that $18.5 million mark. The next 4 items are the HVAC system items, and we've already touched on that, but they're in here for today just so you can see that. And then I will let Paul discuss the booklet that he brought with him with the details of the estimate, unless you want to ask questions of the plans and that kind of thing first.
Anyone have any comments or questions of the plans or things that Gene has talked about so far?
One thing we had just talked about earlier briefly was the design contingency, and I was able to, I guess, find here that there was, I think, $725,000 in that, and that, like you said, there may be things that become available as that gets more refined that we may be able to pull in, like options 5 or 7 or 2 that we, that I had talked about, or that a couple of us had talked about with the north-south connecting drive and the completing the parking lots. For clarification on the 60 spaces that we talked about in line item 5.
Right.
That's on the south side, is that correct? So
That's correct.
The 90 that are down here are included in the base cost
Right.
as a gravel.
As gravel.
Yep. And then, but there would be an additional 60 down here in this gray. Okay.
What made the big difference in the cost between January 2nd and today on VAC, HVAC?
HVAC. We changed the system. So on January 2nd, we were using the basis of design, the geothermal VRF system. And in order to hit our $18.5 million for this estimate, we switched to the condensing unit VRF system, which is
Are you
a
looking at the
lesser
two
cost.
You give us a
spreadsheets?
comparison sheet January 2nd.
Oh,
Today,
I'm
there's
sorry.
a lot of difference in them costs.
The cost differential that we talked about this afternoon in our committee meeting, somebody want to address those price differences for us?
I mean, it's almost $500,000 difference in some of them.
Yeah.
We asked that this afternoon too because
Yeah.
we were concerned.
There was a miscommunication between the design team, and they used the overall project costs for the cost per square foot versus the actual HVAC cost. So we kind of clarified that, and then Mike prepared a new sheet on that. And that's what you're looking at today, is the one that's just the HVAC system cost.
Okay, I just wanted.
Yeah, good catch.
Good question. Anything else? So as long as you're to the mic, we're ready for your booklet.
Well, I'm not going to take very long because Gene covered just about everything I was going to cover. So basically, in your book, you have a summary of the costs and then a comparison to the budget that we did on 12/12. So you can see the differences. Some of those have to do, like we said, we didn't change anything in the learning studios, but the size did change because at that 12/12 time, we had the smaller ones as the basis. This one, we've gone back to the larger size, so there's some square footage increase there in the learning environments. So there's a little bit difference there. The admin and commons were the one that really changed the most for us. That went down significantly by about $800,000. And then the other big change was, okay, we were at a small practice gym, now we're at a competitive gym, so that's changed the square footage there quite a bit. A little bit additional cost in site right now because of the bigger footprint. And then there were some cost changes in the this piece. Since we've increased this project, the design costs have gone up as well. So overall, we're about 856,000 higher than we were. That gets you to that 18.5 number. So then the trick is now we have to design something that makes that 18.5 work. We're very schematic, as you're seeing the same drawings that we're putting the budgets together, and we talked through that today. That's why we have the design contingency. We carry that through design. Once design's done, then that goes away. And then we have some money for construction for the unknowns or things that you might change during construction, so that stays for construction. And Jean already went through all the alternates and options and things like that, so, but I can answer any questions that you have right now. The farther we get into design, the more detail we're going to have, the more information we get to get a closer, better, tighter budget. And that's, but right now we're not at that point yet. So, biggest area we talked about today that's most unknown is the site. We don't really have much information on the site yet, but we feel good about where we feel the team feels good about the number that we have in there right now.
So who or what are we waiting on for more information about the site?
The biggest thing is try to tie down what this, we have to get a footprint and the design tied down first, and then the engineers start working on the detail after that. So they have to get that part first.
Okay.
So that's where we're at now today.
So
Get your
when
approval
we're
from
done
that.
with the design, we hand it over to the engineers, and then that's when they'll make those final determinations,
Yep, and they figure out how to make it work.
how to make it work.
Yep.
Okay. It's part of the process that's been kind of a gray area from time to time, so it's good to have things clarified.
Just the rest of the pages in there are more detailed breakdown of the different areas and elements and things like that, just for your information. And then there are some smaller design plans in there, the overall, so it kind of ties back to the budget.
Any questions for Paul?
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, I didn't include this in your packets, but we brought some exterior images that Jeff's been working on since our last meeting to update the exterior design to the plan that we have right now. So you haven't seen this yet, and I'm sorry I didn't have anything to send to you in advance, so surprise! Jeff, if you want to use maybe Terry's microphone and navigate from there.
You
Yeah,
know,
so
while
from-
Jeff is getting that ready, I just wanted to comment. You know, we haven't been asking a lot of questions here tonight because we put in a lot of time off camera here. Was that 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago.
And
3 hours.
3 hours seated at the board table with BLDD. And so we really did a lot of work and a lot of conversation at that time. So in no way are we just rubber stamping what you're bringing to us. We've worked on this collaboratively.
And basically, you're just answering our questions and leaving us without any more to ask. So-
Yeah.
Which is good. And
Which
that's
is
a good
very
thing.
good, very good.
Thanks for clarifying that, Lorraine. Well said.
Well, from where we left off, looking back at August, started to look at that plan and even some of the master plan that was connected to that. So with updating that, we started to look at maintaining the character that we had started or had reached by that point. Blue circles, yeah, you're just waiting forever. Perfect timing. This is a live program, which is easier for us to kind of navigate and look through, and we can kind of visit and see things that you might want to see a little bit more interactively. As soon as we get through the blue circles. Okay. So with this plan, started to look at modification and simplification of the commons and the gymnasium area. What we had left off with the studio is trying to connect that back with the rest of it. So here we start to see how the drive and access works, and that park area, the court space that we have for Phase 1 in front of the middle school area. And so as we kind of come into that model, we start to see how we bring back or maintain the patio idea, and how that commons and that main entry become that kind of focal piece, and bringing some of the architecture that we had started with within the commons, and then also for the gym, and then all those support spaces to kind of frame in that main entry. So right now, what we're looking at is masonry, metal panel, wood, and glass. And so right now, we're going to be looking at how those systems work together, and we're looking at the SIPS panels for that exterior wall, looking at wood frame towards the interior. And so now we'll start tweaking those prices, quantities, and those type of things, and how this is actually going to all get done. So with a lot of the fenestration, it's planned as part of the daylighting and controlling some of that solar, so you're not getting a lot of extra glare or a lot of heat gain. So that's where some of these elements are based on. So we start to see how that court space works, and also the courtyard with the existing building and the middle school studio space and some of the drop-off area towards that north area. And in the courtyard, which would now be created from the existing circles, that an alternate of how we might still maintain that patio on the west side, and how some of the natural daylighting has come into the classroom studio areas and also within the gym. Simplified a little bit of that gym roof, instead of bringing it up, is actually brought natural daylight from the side. That simplifies some costs and some structure without losing any of the quality of space. And as we look towards the south is where some of the parking is going to be coming back and around into the main commons area. Again, more natural daylight into the commons itself, and then main parking and drop-off towards the east. As we start to see as that entry point and bus drop-off is the type of space, outdoor learning areas we have within that courtyard, also in that patio area, getting that kind of front door impact of Charles City Middle School. And so this all ties in with phase 2 and pretty simple way. And so, and then working out with the grading is that now we have kind of that main entry connecting directly to the drop-off, and we've utilized that topography elevation change on the inside as part of that community character. And so here it's kind of cleaned up a lot of that exterior entry, and it gives it a little bit more height and prominence at that front door. So the rest of these things, we're getting into interiors, we're trying to stay ahead. We like to work on the interiors, making sure that it all works well, then come back to the outside, then kind of go back and forth. So now we've started to bridge into that. We're getting really excited about how those spaces are really starting to look. And that'll be the next phase that we come to present to you. Any questions on some of those elements or anything else you wanted to?
Dr. Cox, your patios are back in the plans that we liked back in August, and then they disappeared for a few months, so I tend to agree, I like them. It's nice to be able to have those spaces available, even on the second floor.
Does look nice.
Because I say that because you mentioned it at a couple of other meetings that
We worked hard to
those
try
had
to,
disappeared.
so cost points, we'll have to kind of navigate where everything's lining up, and so.
And the building is not going to be pink. It looks pink on the screen. Nobody's asked that yet, but it's just the way the computer is talking to the projector right now.
We've learned over time that you're completely in the conceptual phase of things. So as far as colors,
We will have colors for you, and
Okay.
you will get to pick
Yes.
the colors.
oh, what? We get to pick the colors?
We'll give you a choice of 2, and you can pick one.
Okay. You know, half the community will like the color we don't pick, right?
But you only get to choose between 2.
Okay.
And I'll like both of them.
This exterior glass that we're
Shades of
using,
tan,
that's a real high dollar glass, isn't it? I mean, it's more than just normal house window glass. It's got to be able to stand the heat. and
Well,
cold.
it'll be insulated glazing, and depending on what kind of solar control that we might, there may be some additive films if necessary. What we're planning right now is that all overhangs will basically deal with all of the direct sunlight. So it's typical storefront is what we're planning to use.
I just wonder what's the difference in the cost between, I guess the point I'm getting at is what's the difference in the cost between the glass and brick and mortar? I mean, if we eliminate less glass, is it a heck of a difference in cost savings or not?
That's a good question. Looking at
It's a
whole
balancing
systems.
act. We
Yeah.
want to make sure we
Okay.
provide enough daylight, but yeah,
Right.
you're right, it is a higher cost item to have glass, especially when we're comparing it to like a SIPS panel, which we're utilizing to help save some money on the exterior. So it really is a balancing act. And we'll, as we work back and forth with Estes, as we get further through the drawings and detail this quantity of glass, this quantity of non-glass, we might have to tweak that a little bit, but you're right, it is an expensive item.
Well, and a certain quantity of glass should give us all the light that's required, and then there's another, a little more glass just gives you extra light, but I mean, it really, it's not required, don't need it, the extra light, that's what I was wondering, the difference in cost, if it would offset.
We
that.
have someone on staff that does energy modeling and daylight calculations for us, so we could find that tipping point. When is this enough light? When is it too much light? And when does it start affecting the energy performance of the building and the first cost? So,
And you're using that in the design now.
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, and
That's
what,
the question I had.
what we've done is navigated kind of a balance, and so right now we're at about 35% glass, and then where do we use those, and how do we use that appropriately? For instance, it started out with more glass, and then it's like, for the commons, we don't really need quite that much, and so then we started looking at how do we change that to get enough daylight, because one of the ideas is that you could use primarily natural daylight instead of artificial light if you do it well. So that's an energy savings cost point. So it's balancing those things too with that energy modeling that we do. And then the quality of light, without direct glare where it's going to be, kind of a nuisance, but it's an ambient kind of light that's very useful for education.
And there's different levels of the glazing. You're right, commercial insulated glass is more expensive than a residential. Then there's different levels you can go with low E films, different levels that you go up from there. Typically, we're down kind of in the high quality base level.
Well, then another question that I've got, and we're looking at square footage we need, and I know we want that balcony effect type thing, but on the first floor, area 1, and the second floor, area 1, how much more does it cost to put where it's open to the ground, how much more would it put a floor in there? This gives you 4,000 more square feet building right underneath the same roof.
Couple $100 a square foot.
Huh?
Yeah.
Couple $100 a square foot.
Okay. But I just, I know that the students want this area where you can look down and everything else, but is it economically feasible that we could put a floor in there to have a lot more square footage that we're cutting out someplace else?
Well, it has to do with the quality of the space and what you're trying to achieve in that space.
Okay.
So, if we put a lid on the commons area, then we end up with this space that we're in right now. Is that what you want for your commons? And if it is, then we can absolutely do that. And if it's not, then whatever that cost is of that floor and that extra square footage is not worth it.
So what's the high ceilings going to do for the commons area that a normal ceiling? What's it going to do for us?
Sure.
That's the question I'm asking.
Let me tell you what that's done on the last two projects we've worked on. What we've seen is that space in particular is one that changes students' behavior. I know it's going to sound a little silly, or maybe not intuitive, but in a school in Illinois, after the new building was built, they noticed a drop in student referrals, a pretty significant drop in student referrals. And when they investigated what the reason was, what was the cause? Did you use a different program? Did you track things differently? And the administrator said, no, this is the difference. Essentially, they ate in a big wide space with a low ceiling, and in that particular space there was no daylight, and they pumped in a lot of cool air. And when they created this commons that had daylight in it, and it had good flooring to absorb acoustics, and it was acoustically treated space, students relaxed, and it changed their behavior in a measurable way, because they weren't agitated, they weren't running into one another. It was just a much more comfortable space. We've seen it in the last two high schools we've done.
Okay, so it just seems like 4,000 square feet that we could use if there's no big benefit to it.
But it's 4,000 square feet of two-story,
With
not feeling like you're trapped.
Okay.
but it's a place where you can go and there's light and it's airy and it relates from the first to the second floor, and that benefit, you know, has a price as well.
We went, remember back when we went on the visits and we
Yeah,
went to
yeah.
Independence and then we went to the school in Waterloo?
We really do.
But did you not, I felt the difference between when we walked into the school building, the remodeled school building, and even though that remodel was done extremely well and very well,
Right.
those low ceilings and confined entry was much different feeling than walking into Independence or Waverly in the grand entrance. I work primarily in the residential. Every house that's being built right now, that's any type of a higher end, even mid-high end house, has a great room with at least 14-foot ceilings. People know that open space is, I don't know if it's just Iowa, I know it's not because it's all over where I work in Florida and everything too, but it just creates a more open feeling. There's just, and it's hard, I think, to explain it, especially in layman's terms.
Yeah, because I get the feeling, I know when I was a kid, I'd be tempted to throw paper balls over the edge and see who I could hit down below or whatever else, you know. And I'm sure kids all do that.
Well, it goes, that comes back to the passive supervision and providing sight lines
Yeah.
from staff to students, and for students policing each other too.
Okay.
Well, if we,
Two,
oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, can we see the commons a little closer from the exterior? And don't we have some windows on the perimeter there? Maybe that'll help Jim to see.
Well, I'd like to see a
Or can you
view
go
of
inside of it?
what you see
Do you
when
have
you're
anything
standing on the
inside?
second floor, when you're looking over the edge. I'd like to see that.
okay. Well,
I told Jeff he
design-
wasn't allowed to.
No
Because I haven't vetted it yet, and the team hasn't looked at it. We haven't looked at it as a team internally, but.
It's under development. We can take a quick
all
look.
work-
You have to sign a waiver that says if we
Remember,
don't give you this, you're not
This
going
is
to
all work in
complain.
progress.
Okay. I just, asked that question because I was just kind of curious. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So what we start to see is the type of quality of space that, this idea of a destination, of a sense of place, of character where you invite the community to come to. So this was one option we are looking at for that. Whoops, I've gone too far. At the treehouse.
So this is standing in the information commons, looking out into the commons with the two-story space. So in this option that he's showing you, we've moved the main staircase that goes from the first floor up to the second floor to kind of wrap around the treehouse. And then the elevator is kind of mysteriously not there where we were showing it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're looking at different ways we can get everything done and maintain some kind of really clinching character that really defines everything that we've talked about. So the commons becomes one of those things. But then also we had talked about the idea of a performance space, that you don't have an auditorium yet, but having that type of space, this type of space, would allow you to have creative events, or kids could actually do demonstrations or public events or whatever that you wanted to do. And then also the visibility, talking about the glass too, is that sense of transparency and visibility, that school coming alive. So here, starting to see into the commons, starting to see into the courtyard, also the gymnasium, that it's not segmented spaces, it's actually all kind of interrelated. So this was just kind of a look and gives you an idea if we, sorry, spinning around kind of quick. Looking at how some of that, and this is just under development, how that starts to look as you see out in towards the east and maintaining those kind of views, but then also how that performance could happen. Maybe the treehouse is part of the performance. Maybe there's things that are happening up on the information commons. So it's a little bit more of a hospitality type of aspect, but in a different way. We've used words like edutainment, to get kids excited, So having that kind of quality of space, an investment, that there's something special, they know it. And we've seen performance changes within education because of this approach.
Well, I know we kind of agreed on that thing, but I was just, because we were looking at budget and meeting a budget and then cutting some square footage out of this plan over what it was 2 weeks ago. and whatever else. And it looks to me like, I guess, is there enough benefits to having this open as it is to using that extra 4,600 square foot?
Yes, there are.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, if you think so, then I agree with you.
After touring,
It looks nice.
it come for me after touring the schools and having that, wow, that feeling when you walk into a space like that I realized this is going to be one of the things that has to be on the top of our priority list of something that we need, because it's a welcoming for the community. That will be the one spot. Now we walk into our high school, and what do you walk into? I mean, this will be something that will excite all of us, and it'll excite you time and time and time again, because it's going to be a beautiful space, and it's a creative space.
Very creative.
Okay. Well, and then
And it
next
gets away
question
from
would be
the
whether it needed to be that big and
institutionalized
big.
things.
There again, we go back to that comment about, are we building prisons, are we building schools?
But WOW isn't going to educate the kids either.
Nope, that's what we spent all of our time on with the.
But it does have an effect.
Right.
Yes.
We spent all of our time
Yes.
on the learning studios,
Yep.
and this definitely has an effect on,
Well,
I think for
it
too
is.
long,
well.
we've discredited what this part has to do with education. We just automatically assume that education only happens within a classroom, within four walls at a desk. It happens the minute they wake up in the morning and head to school. And then everything throughout the day becomes an educational experience. When they walk into this, it will become an educational experience. It isn't just a classroom.
The addition of all the natural lighting, the controlled air, all of that space is going to enhance the kids' experience. And I can believe what Sam is saying, that the referrals, I think kids are going to feel good about being in a school like this versus what they have.
anything else
Thanks for sharing.
for the
Looks
team?
great.
Thank you.
Very good.
I don't know how you measure it.
That's just if you can.
I'd make a motion to approve the design as presented, as well as the budget, with the exception that the geothermal PRF be added in lieu of the
I'll second that.
condensing unit.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the basic design as presented, and also adding the geothermal VRF as our heating and cooling. Any further discussion? So you've got on your schedule, before we vote, a month from now, we'll have the final design development. Your team will continue to meet with staff and administration to fine-tune different
Yeah.
areas.
Yes. I'm working with Rick to schedule staff meetings the week before, so the week of the 2nd, I think. Week of the 2nd, is that the week before the board meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, to try and so that gives us a couple weeks to further develop the design of some individual spaces, present it to staff, make some revisions, and put together a design development set. Now, I realize you haven't had a chance to select materials, you haven't seen color options, you haven't seen a lot of stuff, which is typically things we do during design development. We're working to get some of that stuff pulled together. So the dates say design development is ending on February 9th. In reality, it's probably not going to end then, but we will print a set of drawings for Estes to use to do their design development cost estimate.
And is it at that time we'll get the updated, where we're at on the design contingency and those dollars, and so the February 9th meeting
Hopefully,
will
yeah.
be closer at least?
It'll be closer, yeah. Depending on how long they need to go through the drawings and how quickly we can get them
What is
printed.
this motion approving? I mean, what's it approving?
This,
That we're happy with this plan, this is it?
Design.
There's made no more changes?
Well,
There will be minor
Minor.
changes
Minor.
as they move forward,
We're not
but,
going to derail.
where the door is and where the light switch is, and
Well, yeah,
that's
that's-
beyond our,
yeah.
it's time to move forward.
What's this board approval on February 9th about?
That's the.
That'll be
that's
the final.
One step further of.
One step
the more
further.
refined, but this gives them direction to develop that refined product.
Yeah, unless the board has any other comments, We'll open it up to the public.
Doug Lindeman speaking. I'll just comment on the commons, just to make sure you're clear on some of the detail here. You're looking at a commons roughly 70 feet by 70 feet, roughly. And keep in mind, they're putting a curve in here that's going to jump from one level up, I think, 5 feet. So it depends on the use you want to put to this room, but if you imagine this room with a 5-foot jump in it, it'd be a little hard to get this group together perhaps in it. So I'm just saying, this commons that they're talking about, I don't know about the other schools they've done, if they put the elevation change in, but whenever you take a room and basically put an elevation change in, you've cut it in half. So I don't think you're gonna have as usable a space as you might otherwise want. So I'm just making that comment to you. You've got an elevation change there, it isn't where I put it, but that's where the architects have put it, and that changes the room substantially. I don't think that's necessarily a benefit. That's my point on your comments.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move back to the board table. Any more comments from the board? Hearing none, we'll proceed to roll call vote. Mrs. O'Brien?
Wintering,
Yes.
Dice,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. You have a lot of work to do in the next 4 weeks as well. Thank you very much
Thank you.
to the design team for all of their time and effort. Moving on to agenda item 6 is a resolution for conveyance of real property. This has to do with the public hearing we had earlier in the evening to convey the interest in property at the high school to the city. Do you have anything further to say in that?
No further comment.
After this is done, will Jim Davis be able to give us paperwork that we need?
Well, we won't get an abstract, but we're going to have the surveys that Yagi did, SEH Yagi, will specifically be the property lines of the high school and soon to be the single campus 5 through 12 property with the appropriate setbacks from the center of the streets.
Okay. And the city's agreed to everything?
Excuse me?
The city has agreed to everything?
Evidently, SEH Yagi has had conversations with the city engineers, and they've all come to the agreements
Mutual agreement?
for this resolution to convey the property. So it cleans up all of the property lines up there so that as these people move forward with our parking lots and driveways and utilities, we know exactly where is our property and where the city right-of-ways are.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to conveyance of real property.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution for conveyance of real property up at our current high school property. Any further discussion or questions from the board members? Anything from the public? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Dice,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Wintering.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Agenda item 7 is cost-saving measures. Dr. Cox?
We have an enrollment decline of 47.15 students that I've talked about a number of times since October at the certified enrollment. And the reduction in students comes with a reduction in state aid for the coming fiscal year. So before you, I presented a list of 30 items for your consideration. The total is in the neighborhood of $366,000 in options, but there are still some unknowns that we have. We don't know who will be choosing to take early retirement. That deadline is January the 30th. We don't know who is going to be seeking professional advancement between now and next August, taking positions elsewhere and leaving the district. We also don't know what the settlement will be with the associations. So at this point, what I would say is I would recommend that the board receive the 30 options. 2 weeks from now, take public comment about the options, and then sometime between February the 9th and April 30th, take action to make cuts up to $334,000 for the coming school year. The cuts come in a number of categories. It's teaching positions, support staff, coaching positions, extended contracts. Curriculum is one of them. There are things that would be reassigned to administrators. There are some things that would be absorbed by existing staff. And none of this is pleasant. None of this is driven by personality. It's merely an attempt to find ways to reduce the budget with the least impact on students and student achievement.
Most, if not all, of the individuals affected by these options have been notified?
I spent the bulk of the day today notifying individuals. There are in some cases where a position is being eliminated, then that employee can bump another employee, and there's a trickle-down effect. Those employees have not been notified. We have to wait to see, again, based on some of those unknown factors, how that will be determined.
And some of those things are determined by contract.
By contract. But by April 30th, we have to notify affected employees that their position is being cut, if that, in fact, is what takes place.
Because as of right now, your notification was just telling us a possibility of it.
Possibility.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And again, there are more cuts being proposed than what you'll need to make, so that you have some options as to what you'd like to keep and what will end up being cut.
This is probably not a question that I should ask you, but 40 students, and now we're looking at doing some of these. Were some of these services, were we over-providing some of these services to begin with?
I would say no. I would say, we operate at a pretty minimal level, staffing-wise, as it is, and we knew this was coming, and we took action last year with the early retirement to reduce that number, or it would have been a lot higher this year.
Would have been a lot worse.
So that's a good question. Another question that surely will surface is, we just spent the last hour talking about a new building. How can you build a new building if you have to make cuts to teachers and to programs? The general fund is what we're having to cut money out of, and the general fund is salaries, utilities, those types of things. A separate fund is facilities, and that's PEPL, the physical plant and equipment levy, it's sales tax, and you cannot move money between those two items. So building the brand new school is totally unrelated to the general fund reductions that we have to make.
Those cuts to get into budget line with budget would have to been made anyway, whether we build a new building or not.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Good point, Jim. I had posed this question to you. Can you give me or Terry an idea, and I know it won't be particularly popular, but what kind of savings that we would have if we drained the pool and it sat empty as an alternative?
That's a number that we're working on right now, because it's not one of the 30 that is listed, but the guesstimate is somewhere between 70 and 100,000.
Did we fix the things that you sent an email one day saying that was 3,000 gallon leak in it?
Right.
Did we fix that?
Yeah, so we've been making repairs to the pool, and several ones recently.
Okay.
So one item that I would like to see added is the consideration of that, whether that be a 6-month thing, a year thing, whatever it may be, as at least consideration. I certainly favor teachers over pool water. be a big one in my opinion.
Would that affect,
That's a good suggestion.
Dr. Cox, would that affect the swimming team then too?
Yes, and in fact,
And staff there too, then probably?
the swimming team is one of the 30 options
Oh, that's one, okay.
for reduction.
Yeah, okay.
We currently share with, is it Mason City for boys swimming? Is that right?
Yes.
And to this point, we have no official early retirement
Right.
applications, correct?
Correct.
I was telling Scott before the meeting started that a couple teachers that aren't eligible for early retirement, but they said, if you want to get more of us to early retire, pay our insurance costs till we become eligible to go on Medicare. Of course, that'd be a lot more expensive to the school.
I'd take that.
Instead of giving us the cash. We'd rather have the insurance than the cash.
That becomes very expensive.
Yes.
That's why it hasn't been offered.
I know, but that's the suggestion one of them made.
So at the present time, under this agenda item, the administration is recommending that the board approve the suggested timeline and process and officially note receipt of these budget reduction options for the next school year. We're not planning on going through all 30 of them here at the meeting. The press has been given an advance copy, correct? And we'll be printing those at a later date and time, or even tomorrow. I don't know when they'll print it, but they do have the information, so it will be out publicly. And are we planning on putting this on our website as well?
Yes. Yes. And it will be emailed to all staff either later tonight or in the morning.
Okay.
Dr. Cox, I have one question here. I'm curious about this, switching the school calendar from days to hours.
Yes.
And have there been other school districts in the state or maybe even in the country that have extended that school day to complete the requirements for hours? Maybe there's a 4.5-day school week or 4-day school, I don't know how it would work out, but I mean, I'm curious about how those savings would measure up. I think there would be some benefit there.
True. The collective bargaining agreement states very specifically how many days, and it's 180 with students, 2 days for parent-teacher conferences, and 5 days for professional learning. And so if the association and the school board agreed to some changes in that, and we adopted the 1,080 hours instead of 180 days, then perhaps we could have 176 days that still is in excess of the 1,080 hours, and that's 4 fewer days of running the school bus. There's some other staffing savings that could be realized as well, or whether it's 177, 174, a different number than 180. And that's where you can realize some savings.
Yeah. I have to say that you and everyone that's worked on these options, you've done a good job on the variety of cost-saving measures. None of us really want to have this conversation. Of course, nobody wants to talk about cutting anyone's job, of course. So anything that we can do, in, like you're saying, eliminating the pool water, eliminating all of those expenses versus cutting someone's livelihood, I think is important to all of us here.
Well, just cutting a teacher.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
just their livelihood, but it's also another teaching staff that is currently being utilized in teaching children.
Right.
That's one less teacher.
Yeah.
Is,
And the trickle-down effect on the, our local economy, too.
And I'd also made the point that, we're kind of in an unfortunate situation where we have 1 year to, hopefully get through
9 months.
to have many more options at our disposal to absorb some of this stuff. So as creative as we can get to make it to that year is in our best interest there to realize a lot of more savings when the new building's open.
It'll be way easier to utilize staff when 5 through 12 is all in one building, one property.
Right.
Does the state dictate that we got to go 5 days a week?
No, they say that you have to choose between 180 days or 1,080 hours.
How many more hours a day would it add to go to a 4-day week? and get the same hours.
I would have to,
That would eliminate a lot of bus routes 1 day a week and everything else. That'd be a big cost savings, but you'd have to go back to negotiating contracts and everything else, wouldn't you? Because we're on a.
It gets
so
tricky,
many
yeah.
days.
It gets tricky.
You have to go way back to that point, but I just wondered if you'd looked at that prospect in the future, you know? Just a thought.
I've looked at it only a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that we should move on. I want to go ahead and kind of make a motion on your topic there, Jason, that we end up shutting down, take the water out of the pool. Let's do that as a separate motion, I think, and then come along with the cost savings, the other cost savings, and then we'll have to, because this is not a final decision yet until we get closer to time. This gives us an idea to pursue with it, but
Yeah.
let's get started.
Can we wait to get the numbers from Terry, I guess, or the
Yeah,
feasibility?
we need to make sure.
Just to make sure, I mean, so that we're informed on what the number is. You know, I support that, but
Yeah.
I would like to see the numbers from,
Well, I'm sure it's.
yeah, but
That's everybody says the pool's costing money, you know, so I'm sure. it's
and
costing
then, you know, preliminarily, the number
Yeah.
that I hear is big. I
Right.
mean, that's why it
Okay.
stands out to me.
Get the actual figures.
So
Yeah.
are you making a motion to do that tonight, or are you just
No.
agreeing
I-
that
I
that
won't
needs to be
tonight on
looked
that.
at?
Okay.
I just, no.
Okay.
We'll
You're
look at
just-
it next meeting.
Yeah.
Supporting,
Okay.
you're supporting.
I'm
Jason.
supporting
Yeah,
Jason.
good.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the suggested timeline and processes for the cost-saving measures.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote.
Walker,
Yes.
Christie,
Yes.
Maycumber.
Yes.
Wintering,
Yes.
Geis.
Yes. Motion carried 5-0.
Can I have your copy
Of what?
of the budget cuts? I'll have Justin go run some copies to the public.
Sure. Agenda item 8, local access channel 28E agreement. What they're doing is making some more copies so those of you present can get copies of those cut proposals. Local access channel 28E agreement. We have that in our packet. Do you have any information on that?
I don't.
I haven't seen anything about that.
Justin, do you sit on that board, or do you work for them?
I work for them and I sit on the board at this time.
Do you have anything to add as far as this 28E agreement that's changes, do you know?
There are no changes that I'm aware of. It was gone.
Sorry. You stepped out, so I asked Justin to explain the 28E agreement.
We're making some copies for the public of the budget cut proposals.
Yep, I told him that.
There are no changes that I'm aware of, and this is the 2080 agreement that is between the school, the city, the chamber, and community revitalization that runs the local access cable channel, or actually has been redefined as the public access network. Because one of the things that we're adding is we're adding a website where anyone in the community, or actually anyone in the world, will be able to watch programming as well. So this is the funding. It includes $35,900 and some dollars that comes to the school for the services provided by the school district.
Does that cover the total expense of it then? The money that's coming towards the school? Can you say $39,000 is coming towards the school?
$35,900 and some dollars comes to the school. What that does is it allows the school district to have an employee who runs the video aspect of the public access network, and then the equipment and everything else that goes into it, like the camera that's being used and the computer that I use, that is paid for from that fund, and that is not a school expense. The studio equipment is not a school expense. It is paid for out of that fund. That fund is also not tax dollars as well. It is paid for by an access fee by MediaCom customers.
Okay.
And so really the largest benefit is that you have me on staff here through the school district, and that 70% of my salary is covered by that $35,900 and some dollars.
Okay, so that, well, yeah, okay, that's fine. All right.
Does that answer
I just
your-
wondered if that covered the expense of the grant, but it don't quite cover all of it. Right?
I'm not sure what expense is not covered.
The public access network part is paid for.
There is no expense to the school district for this.
Okay, that's fine.
And really, it's only a benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, the school pays nothing, but receives almost $36,000 for this.
Stay in, yeah.
Well, if we make some equipment upgrades that the school wants to keep, then we would pay for that.
Above and beyond what the 28E and the
Right.
MediaCom fees coming
Correct.
into the city.
Correct, but students have access to use the studio, and they can come and go as they need to, and they have full access to everything. And like the students who come and record city council meetings and school board meetings, they are not paid for by the school district. They are paid for out of this fund as well. And so,
It's a really good
Very good.
arrangement that we
Very
have.
good arrangement.
Absolutely.
We're very, very fortunate and thank MediaCom for allowing that, for us to have that funding.
Well, I'll make a motion that we go ahead and approve the local access channel 2080 agreement.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the local access channel 28E agreement as presented. Any further discussion? Comments? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Frisbee,
Yes.
Maycumber,
Yes.
Wintering,
Yes.
Dyke,
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Moving on to agenda item 9, financial report for December 2014.
I really only have one comment. We're a third done with the year now, and you have all the numbers there showing our account balances and comparisons to revenue
You
and
mean
expense.
half done? You said a third.
Well, we go through August 31st.
Okay,
If you,
because you do the accrual.
you have to do the accrual.
Okay, sorry.
So for the most part, the salaries are only, a fourth done, or a third done. The only comment I have is I did give you the activity report, and there is one account that's negative. We have a deposit coming in this week, so that should take care of that negative in the FFA account.
Any questions for Terry on the financial report for December of 2014?
I'll make a motion that we accept the report as presented.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the financial report for December of 2014. Any more questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote, please.
Maycumber?
Yes.
Wintering?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Agenda item 10 is the audit report for 2013-14.
Dan, did you get that PowerPoint to come up?
No, I haven't turned on my computer yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll just kind of.
Do you have one?
I have just a few things I was going to comment about and maybe show, but no.
Now would
big
be
deal.
an appropriate time, seeing as it's so chilly in here, for a 5-minute recess, and that would give you time to do that?
Yes.
You can do that.
Okay, we'll declare a short recess while you get your technology up to date.
Games.
Well, we got the water pressure.
Time is 8 p.m. and we'll call the meeting back to order and go for the audit report for 13-14. Mrs. O'Brien, make sure you tip your microphone and pull it up a little closer for you.
Okay. Yeah.
She didn't tip it.
No, she didn't tip her.
Pretend like you're kissing your husband.
Yeah. I'm not
7-0
gonna
Oregon.
go through all of the financial numbers in the audit report. They are the same as our certified annual report numbers. They're presented in different fashion, restructured, but they're all the same numbers. So you saw those in September. Our audit opinion states that we presented fairly in all material aspects of our finances. This is the highest opinion which we can get. It's called an unqualified opinion. And just so that you can kind of look at the audit report in segments, we have in the first part the management discussion and analysis on pages 7 through 16 with financial highlights and economic factors affecting the district. The management discussion and analysis was something they added probably 6 years ago, and it's meant to kind of recap for somebody looking at the report in just a pretty concise way what factors there are, so you don't have to thumb through numbers and try to figure that out. But on the economic factors on pages 16 and 17, we talk about the decline in enrollment. We talk about our building a facility, a middle school addition to our high school, hoping to create efficiencies with being able to share staff. We also talk about our current middle school and what we're trying to do with that space. Maybe continuing to use part of the space here for district offices and such. And then the last bullet point, that we issued a $10 million note and that we have plans to issue more debt to finish our middle school project. And then this kind of just, if you're at all interested, here's your pieces, 17 through 28 financial statements, and you can see how the audit report is broke up. The last part of the report is where they talk about compliance issues and schedule of audit findings. So I'm going to go right to that. We had several comments. The first one you could look at as, I mean, it's going to benefit the school. It's unfortunate that we did understate our certified enrollment last year, but we can make it up this coming budget year. We'll be able to count almost 7 students that were understated in previous years.
There's no retroactive recapturing of that funding, I assume?
Not until we can get it in our budget, and because it has to go through this process where the auditors looked at what was understated and agreed that we had understated.
Okay.
Because we found it and brought it to them, but it has to go through this process in order for us to be able to count them.
Okay.
And we had 2 free and reduced lunch applications that were incorrectly classified. And Dawn is aware of it, and, you know, we just need to take steps to ensure that they're classified correctly. 3 other comments were made, which were smaller in nature, the total of about $45. One was travel expenses where we didn't pay somebody, like $9 and a $20, that sort of thing. And then the last comment I'm making is that our internal control deficiency or segregation of duties from the prior year report, we have resolved with our auditors, and they feel like we have adequate controls with our staff. And that is all I was going to say about it, because I didn't want to go back through the numbers again. You can look through those yourself. There will be, the auditors always send something to the paper, so they have like a summary of our audit report as well.
Any questions or comments for Mrs. O'Ryan?
Well, I just got a couple of things, Terry. Back there on page 66, it shows, other findings related to required statutory reporting. I just wondered, I see they must have questioned the fact that we bought gift cards and chamber dollars. What do they recommend you do for something like that?
Well, you can't buy gift cards.
I see that.
If you are going to do a prize, it needs to be an item. They don't want you to be able to convert a gift card to cash so that a student could then take the cash and buy whatever they wanted. But it needs to be something that's not convertible.
Okay, I see. There's the answer to my question, the convertible. Okay.
Do we end up with these gift cards like through turn that off. Do we end up with these gift cards like through donations for different events?
No, and this gift card was kind of unfortunate, this one transaction, because that comment was on last year's report as well. And by the time the audit report was done, we had already purchased one. So no excuse, because it is something that we've had on our radar, and trying to convince the staff members, it's just not acceptable. Even though we think maybe a gift card is an okay prize, we can't do it. And so it sometimes takes convincing, and we need to be more vigilant in our office to stop it when it comes through.
Nice job, Terry. To go through all of that financial analysis with the auditors and to just have those few things. We really owe you a whole lot of thanks to be able to do the job you're doing. And
they truly are going to run out of things to find. I mean, it's got to give us.
Very good.
They've taken the extra employee off.
Is there a motion for agenda item 10?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the audit report for 13-14 as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have roll call vote.
Wintering?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Maycumber?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Agenda item 11, consideration of consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Roll call vote, please.
Dyke?
Yes.
Walker?
Yes.
Frisbee?
Yes.
Maycumber?
Yes.
Wintering?
Lorraine.
Oh, I didn't hear. Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Agenda item 12, important upcoming dates. Dr. Cox.
Wait, oh, yeah, okay.
Again, we have SIAC on Wednesday, next board meeting on the 26th. Don't forget there's a meeting in Sumner on the 28th, a district meeting that you're invited to attend. If you'd like to go, let Lisa know. She'll get you registered.
Don't register me.
And on the 29th, we've got a 500 North Grand meeting.
I will be absent the 26th for a work conflict.
Are we gonna take a school vehicle to
Yes.
Sumner?
Yep,
Okay, so what time do they would be leaving here?
probably 4:30.
4:30? Okay.
Get your board credits.
Yeah.
And are you going to be able to make the 500 meeting at the end of January?
I plan to, yes.
Okay, because I will not be able to make that meeting. Getting into the time when I don't usually leave the office.
I so move we adjourn.
We are adjourned.